One of the key things unique to Mortal Kombat in the fighting game genre historically is its focus on story and character development. Ever since Mortal Kombat 4, the Midway developers focused on the growth of each character and the lore of the series. As such, Mortal Kombat is a franchise frothing and overflowing with fantastic characters, many with their own unique character arcs and developments that set them apart from characters in every other fighting game franchise. You're watching Rayl Deal Games, and this week I'll be sharing my top 10 personal favorite Mortal Kombat characters. Everyone's bound to have their own personal favorites, especially on a topic like this, so I'd love to hear all of yours in the comments below. While you're there, smash that like button and subscribe if you end up liking the video. I make new gaming videos every single Friday, and at least one of those each month is a Mortal Kombat one. With all of that established, let's dive right in. Number 10, Cassie Cage. Let's start off a little controversial here. Mortal Kombat X is my second favorite game in the franchise, and one of the things I love most about the title is actually the new characters in the cast. While the criticisms regarding MKX's campaign's conclusion and handling of Shinnok have some serious validity, I personally enjoyed the Combat Kids. I was in college when MKX came out, so these characters were closer to my age than most of the others on the cast felt, which definitely contributed to my personal enjoyment of them. Cassie Cage is one of my favorite characters introduced in the NRS era. The character development of the Cage family is one of the real strengths present in MKX and MK1, and Cassie Cage really feels like a combination of Sonya and Johnny. And in a lot of ways, she and her compatriots feel way more real than most of the traditional classic MK characters, even those from the 3D era, which I'm pretty partial to. The gameplay advantages Cassie received from being the offspring of 2 of the 7 original MK characters is shown best via the variation mechanic in MKX, where her heredity is displayed in 3 separate ways for the player to pick between. In fact, the variation mechanic provided a nice subtle bit of character context for the combatants that really helped Cassie Cage and other new and returning additions to the MK cast really stand out and become fleshed out through gameplay. Her pre-fight quips with the other combatants on the cast are also god tier and really showed the sarcastic side she got from her father, which juxtaposes nicely with her more serious Sonya side in the campaign. I like her interactions with both of her parents, especially Johnny, and she's a character I'd like to see more of in future games, even if it doesn't make a whole lot of sense with the way Cage is a young man again. Number 9. Ashrah. I grew up in poverty, and one of the consistent early things I learned as a child is the way people look down on children whose only crime is being born into a rough environment. I think it's for this reason the story of Ashrah has always sat well with me, as she is a demon of the Netherrealm, who seeks to undo her evil nature through effort and hard work. That work is expressed through the savage murdering of evil entities residing within the Netherrealm, which really adds a Mortal Kombat twist, a flair unique to the series to this sort of character archetype. Beyond this, the white, simple design of Ashrah's clothing stands in stark contrast with the dreary, dirty environments of the Netherrealm. One of Mortal Kombat Deception's strongest traits is the way that the game had representatives in the cast for every major realm in the mythos of Mortal Kombat. Ashrah, contrary to many of the other realm representatives, holds her realm in complete contempt, and her primary questline involves her escaping, which she manages to do by defeating Noob Saibot in Mortal Kombat. Being cast out of the Netherrealm and into Edenia has biblical connotations to it as well, since Edenia obviously is inspired by the idyllic ideal of Eden and the garden therein. Within that realm, she fits in perfectly, demonstrating the heights at which a person can reach through hard effort. In terms of the 3D era characters who return in MK1, Ashrah is one that fared the best, since her characterization is fairly in line with her original iteration. The same can't be said of my next entry. Number 8, Havik. Havik, the Cleric of Chaos, has only had 3 appearances in MK games, and one of them, Armageddon, hardly counts from a character development standpoint. In Deception, Havik fully embraced the ethos of Chaos, embodying the concepts down to the core foundation of his moveset, design, and story. When the player meets Havik in the Conquest mode, he makes it very clear that when he makes a request, he doesn't expect the player to rush, as it would be sacrilegious to force someone someone to do something against their will. To cage them into a contract, even if only spoken, would be against the tenets of chaos. This is something NRS failed to replicate with Titan Havik and Chaos Reigns, who really does feel like a bastardization of this original concept. In fact, the reason Havik works against the interests of both Onaga and the warriors allied against him is that he views the success as either to be a loss for Chaos, which is why he resurrects Shao Kahn in his Deception ending. The constant campaigns of conquest Shao Kahn attempts destabilizes the fabric of the realms, which I speculate is one of the reasons Armageddon happens in the first place. Whether this was the intention of the Midway developers before the company's money troubles messed up the writing for that game, I'm not sure, but within my headcanon, that's my interpretation and inference into where the team was going with the resurrection of Shao Kahn's subplot. That destability in the fabric of the realms is absolutely something Havik would want, and in that way I actually quite like how his ending properly represents his core values. Here's to hoping we get the real Cleric of Chaos back in MK13. The imposter we have right now just isn't the same. Number 7. Kotal Kahn. Kotal Kahn is the perfect powered down replacement of Shao Kahn, putting him more in line power level wise as the combat kids and other new characters in MKX was a great idea, and this element of characterization is further shown by the way Shao Kahn dunks on him when they meet in MK11. In terms of ancient civilization architecture and art, I've always been pretty partial to the Aztecs. The Aztec being heavily inspired by them sets them up to be something I instantly liked, and the variations Kotal Kahn has in MKX further match the vibes and inspiration for his character design. One of the few things I like about the plot of MK11, and you know, there's a lot to dislike about that game, but there are some things that were genuinely good, is the romance between Kotal and Jade, which I think actually works quite well for both characters. I'd actually like to see how they interacted back in the days of Shao Kahn's dominance, when Kotal was a general within Shao's armies and Jade was one of his prized assassins. What sort of moments did they steal away together in the brief moments they received? In addition to this, Kotal's MK11 ending gives us a window into the spiritual beliefs of the Aztec, with his complete and utter resignation to fate. This is actually a trait unique to Kotal Kahn and explains why he never attempted to usurp Shao Kahn in MK9. He accepted his position, and it was only because of the vacuum of power that he raised himself into a position of prominence. If MK13 continues the plot threads established in MK1, I hope Kotal Kahn is brought back in so that we can see how he plays off of General Shao's insurrection. That may be one small step towards salvaging the story of the franchise at least. Number 6. Shujinko. Shujinko is the protagonist, pun intended, of Deception. As a boy, Shujinko is fooled into embarking on a quest to gather the Kamidogu that make up the realms for Damashi, a spirit claiming to be in service of the Elder Gods. In actuality, Damashi is the consciousness of Onaga, his force of will surviving his death at the hands of Shao Kahn from eons past. In this way, Shujinko is groomed from his teens to believe he's the main character of the series, much like his name alludes to. For those of you who don't know, Shujinko means protagonist in Japanese. However, this is a bit of an ironic pun, as Shujinko is not the main character of MK, as he is little more than a side character that is deceived into giving reality-shattering power to the Dragon King. If you pay attention to the chronology of events in Deception and juxtapose them to the events of the previous 5 games in the franchise, Shujinko is absent from all major events because of this quest. The main character until Deadly Alliance is Liu Kang, and even though Shujinko nearly supplanted him as the champion of Mortal Kombat, all the way back at the first tournament, his chance to compete and prove himself is interrupted by pressure to complete his quest by Onaga. In the end, Shujinko would lose most of his years of life to the time-stealing pool of liquid protecting the Chaos Realm's Kamidogu and to the legal system of Sado, the Realm of Order. The conflicting powers of Chaos and Order in this way steal most of Shujinko's life, as much as Onaga himself does. This is why he's such a tragic character, as he started as just a boy, a teenage boy with lofty goals and dreams, aspirations of which are used to ruin the rest of his life, consigning him to a life of misery and redemption. In the end, he kills Onaga, shattering the Kamidogu with his power, and his reward for this isn't a peaceful passing. Instead, he's killed by Dark Raiden for his transgressions against Earthrealm. It's a complex, time-intensive character arc that would need a whole game at least to do properly, which I speculate is one of the reasons NRS hasn't attempted bringing him back into the franchise before MK1. In Kung Lao's ending, we finally see Shujinko again, and no, I don't really count the Easter egg in Cassie Cage's MKX ending. In MK1, he's already attained the power to copy the fighting styles of other combatants, a power he received from Onaga originally. Since the Kamidogu show up in Chaos Reigns, this could mean that the Deception era of the lore could be coming back in MK13. If they do go down that route, I hope they do Shujinko justice, because he deserves it after being ignored for 20 years. Number 5. Shao Kahn. The tyrannical conqueror of Outworld, Shao Kahn, is one of the greatest gaming villains of all time. Simply put, Shao Kahn has one goal, and that is the conquest of other realms. Once he's conquered a realm, he merges it with Outworld, bringing all of the world's people under his heel. Originally, Shao Kahn was a retainer for Onaga, and it was only through treachery and trickery that he managed to steal Onaga's throne from him. Once instilled upon that throne, Shao Kahn began conquering liberally across the realms until the Elder Gods stepped in to slow his progress by requiring 10 consecutive victories in Mortal Kombat before he would be allowed to merge a realm into his. This dictum only slowed his conquest, as Vaeternus, Zatara, and Edenia all failed to defeat Outworld in Mortal Kombat. It was only when the Earthrealm hero Liu Kang defeated Shang Tsung that Shao Kahn tasted defeat for the first time in several millennia. Not being able to accept that, Shao Kahn listens to Shang Tsung's suggestion to create an Outworld tournament, where the normal set of 10 required victories is instead reduced to 1. This too he would lose, this time suffering defeat at the hands of Liu Kang himself. Concocting a plan to invade Earthrealm, circumventing the rules of the Elder Gods by exploiting a technicality, Shao Kahn begins to steal all the souls of Earthrealm's denizens, save for those strong enough to resist his power. Liu Kang would defeat him again, freeing Earthrealm, and while Shao Kahn rested in Outworld licking his wounds, Shinnok would attempt his rebellion against the gods. Afterwards, Quan Chi and Shang Tsung would kill Shao Kahn, ending his tyranny until Havik resurrected him in deception. With Liu Kang dead, Shao Kahn crests the top of the Pyramid of Argus to do combat with Blaze. Defeating Argus's spawn, Shao Kahn takes Blaze's power for himself, kills Raiden, and conquers the entire Mortal Kombat universe before his newfound lack of purpose drives him insane. This is the original story of Shao Kahn, ignoring the retcons of his GameCube Deception appearance and Mortal Kombat 9. In this way, Shao Kahn's power and dominance is a core feature of Mortal Kombat's story, and makes his MK11 and MK1 iterations even more insulting. Number 4. Onaga. The only villain I like more than Shao Kahn is Onaga. Onaga only ever received one real appearance, as the writing for his character in Armageddon was clearly done by someone that didn't understand him, since it reduces him down to a Shao Kahn hating, one-dimensional villain. Deception Onaga is a completely different beast. He manipulates the events of Mortal Kombat in his favor, always staying hidden, as the Elder Gods could and would stop him if they knew what he was planning. His plan was to become the One Being, a mythical figure in Midway Mortal Kombat lore. The One Being was what existed before the Elder Gods, and in a conflict that led to the death of most of the Elder Gods would separate the One Being into several shards, these becoming the realms that make up the Mortal Kombat universe. Each of these realms has an item of significant power, the Kamidogu. If someone were to gather up all of the Kamidogu, they could merge the realms together, reforming the One Being once again. Onaga sought to use the power of this merger to combine his consciousness with that of the One Being, turning him into the sole existence in the realms. In this way, Onaga's narcissism is on full display, and this arrogance is what would lead to his downfall. Giving Shujinko the power to copy the fighting abilities of anyone he came across would eventually be the exact thing that would lead to his own downfall. The combined power of everyone Shujinko encountered in his journeys allowed him to smash the Kamidogu to dust and end Onaga's ambitions. From the first moment I saw Onaga in the intro cinematic of Deception, he became my favorite villain in the series, as he has this powerful aura that no other villain has ever come close to embodying. With another good game under his belt, he probably would land a few spaces higher for me, because I'd like to see what he was like as the original ruler of Outworld. What happened to turn him into the reality level threat he would become? Were the Elder Gods against him even back in those days? How long did Shao Kahn serve Onaga before betraying him? These are the things I'd love to see in future games, even if they were spin-off titles. Number 3. Johnny Cage. Of all the characters from the first game, Johnny Cage received the most character development in the NRS era. Starting out as the self-obsessed actor, Cage learns to value the things in life that actually matter after seeing the danger the realms faced at the hands of individuals like Shao Kahn. His selfish wants and desires are further undone by his relationship with Sonya Blade, one that would lead to the birth of their daughter, Cassie Cage. There's a lot of things in Mortal Kombat lore that came from the 1995 film, and this romance is likely one such element. Much like Kano's ethnicity changing from Chinese to Australian following the success of the movie, Cage begins to get real characterization in the games following that release. The NRS era Cage starting in MKX is how I've always viewed the character in my own head. He starts out as little more than a joke for the characters that understand what's really going on in the first tournament, but as time goes on, he becomes a hero. In this way, Cage shows just how much any person can change given the right motivation. In his MK11 ending, we see that hitting rock bottom was the wake-up call Cage needed, showing how relapsing into negative character traits is something we all have to struggle against as we move through life. The growth of Cage's character is something NRS needed to do with all of the characters in Mortal Kombat, and is the starkest example of the varying quality of writing in modern Mortal Kombat games. It's one of the reasons I'm thankful for the lore-based storytelling approach of the Midway era. My next entry benefits greatly from it. Number 2. Mileena. My first Mortal Kombat game that I properly played an extended amount is Deception. I had technically played Mortal Kombat 1 and Mortal Kombat 3 before, but Deception is the one I spent a lot of time with first. And Mileena is one of the more interesting characters in that game. Deception is the first game beyond MK2 where Mileena received any real character development. In it, she poses as Kitana and commands the armies of Edenia against Onaga's forces. She does this in an attempt to drive the forces of Onaga's enemies into the dirt, but instead, Raicho and others make up for her intentional deficiencies and start winning. Seeing a pathway for her to maintain her position as Queen of Edenia permanently, Mileena seeks to kill Baraka since he's the only one who knows about her deception. While her deception story would end with her death at the hands of Baraka, this dichotomy between these two Tarkatan titans and her Edenian blood from Kitana is interesting. Mileena almost has a double consciousness of her own in this game, which is an element of her characterization that would follow her into the NRS era, where she would become Khanum in the shadow of Shao Kahn. She would once again die, this time at the hands of D'Vorah, before being resurrected in MK11 and coming back in MK1. In the early parts of MK1's campaign, Mileena actually fares pretty well, and I do like some of the writing the NRS team did for her in that game. While there are definitely more negatives than positives within Mortal Kombat 1's writing, Mileena's characterization is not one of them. If they continue with this reboot in MK13, Mileena's continual growth and change is something I'm super stoked to see. Now I have one honorable mention before we talk about my favorite Mortal Kombat character, and that is Li Mei. She was so close to making the top 10, but I do like Cassie just a hair more. Li Mei does have some great background though, as she enters the Deadly Alliance tournament to save her city Sundo. The reward for winning the tournament was a trick, however, as instead of being free, Shang Tsung begins to steal Li Mei's soul with the intent of putting it in the mummified body of a Dragon King soldier. Raicho saves her at the last moment and takes her under his wing as one of his pupils. The brief interaction between Li Mei's soul and the Dragon King's soldier's body left her corrupted, a corruption of which makes her sympathetic to the Dragon King's cause. This is why in her Deception ending she supports Onaga, becoming his queen after he accomplishes his goals. In MKX, Li Mei is just a refugee from Outworld. In MK1, she's the captain of the guard in Sundo. Neither iteration is terrible, but there is just something missing about both takes on the character, and I hope she gets a bit more fleshed out in MK13. Number 1, Raiden. My favorite character is the God of Thunder himself, Raiden. Mortal Kombat 9 is where my love of this character really started to take off, even though I was incredibly partial to Dark Raiden in the late Midway era. I like seeing Raiden in this position where he tries to do good without sacrificing his morals and nobility. All of that changes once he's been corrupted, and I like the juxtaposition between both Raidens. This is one of the main things about MK11 that rubbed me personally the wrong way, since MKX really built up Dark Raiden to be a key figure in its sequel via the post-credits sequence. Raiden received a lot of development in MK9 and MKX, and it would have been nice to see Dark Raiden receive the same love. Dark Raiden in Deception is my favorite one from that game since it shows the dark side of protection and justice, how things we consider to be virtue can be corrupted and changed into something sinister, something dastardly. In this way, I like the thematic value Raiden brings into Mortal Kombat, as there is plenty of room to establish and explore philosophical ideas ideas through his character. That is, if NRS ever wanted to. His redesign in MK1 is not something I'm currently sold on, but if they can somehow get the story of the series back on track in MK13, I'd love to see him develop further. And that's the video, my guys. Who's your favorite Mortal Kombat character? Let's discuss the awesome characters from this franchise in the comments below, and while you're there, smash that like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell. That's the only way to make sure you don't miss out on my weekly gaming videos. Even if variety isn't something you care for, you can be sure to get at least one Mortal Kombat video each month from me. Regardless of what you choose to do, thank you for keeping it real with Rayl Deal Games. Have an awesome day, my friend.